So many of our kids are now shut-ins, devoid of personal interaction. We gotta get out of our bubbles. We gotta mingle. It's time to mingle.
I know what's wrong with America. We're living in an age of conflict brought about by disconnect, which has frayed the fabric of our nation. It has polarized our politics. It has harmed the mental health of our kids. But I think I know how to fix it. At long last, welcome to the Mingle Project. Go forth and mingle. Thank you. Hey gang, welcome to episode 4 of the Mingle Project here on YouTube. And thank you for your continued interest in our exploration of what exactly fractured America and how do we put the pieces back together. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, set yourself up for notifications so that you never miss an episode. Today, a most important piece of the puzzle, self-sorting, and with the expert, the guy who made me realize that my prior focus on gerrymandering was ignoring an equally important, less discussed part of the problem. David Wasserman is the senior editor and elections analyst for the Cook Political Report with Amy Walter. He's recognized as one of the nation's top election forecasters. David, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate your time always.
Well, thank you, Michael. It's an honor, and I commend you for your research into what's driving America apart.
Well, okay, but you're the one who lit the fuse on this important aspect because in the past, we spoke of gerrymandering, and I want to talk about gerrymandering now, but you're the person who said to me, you're missing a part of the puzzle here because self-sorting is as much of a problem as gerrymandering. Let's start with the gerrymandering. I'll ask this question. Of the 435 congressional districts, roughly, I know we're a ways away, but roughly how many do you think will be competitive in the midterm election?
I think in any given cycle, we can expect around 40 House districts, somewhere between 30 and 40 House districts to be truly competitive and attract a lot of outside spending from the parties. Now, it could be a moving target because if the president's approval rating drops from 45 to 39, then we're looking at a deeper set of targets down the Republican target depth chart. And so it is not certain right now what that battleground will be exactly, but given the distribution of House seats, I think we're looking at maybe 3 dozen.
Okay, said differently, 400 or so are locked in based on whomever wins the primary.
That's right. And we've seen a diminishment of competitive districts for 2 reasons. Number one, the gerrymandering and self-sorting that has led to just this narrow band of districts that are within that competitive range, but also the rise in straight ticket voting. Because it used to be that a Democrat with strong qualifications and who is a good cultural fit for a district could win a seat that the opposite party's presidential candidate won by 20 points. And the same was true for a strong Republican with local credentials. We don't see that happening anymore because there are fewer local news outlets and print media sources that differentiate an individual candidate from their party label. And we're seeing more and more voters that just operate on a straight ticket because they view the other party as an existential threat to the country. We weren't in that place 20 or 30 years ago.
Perfect timing for you to say that because in episode 3 of the Mingle Project, we talked about what happens in an age of syndication and nationalization of the political issues when we don't have the local media providing the glue that keeps our communities together. By the way, this gerrymandering aspect of it, and then I'll get to self-sorting, it's becoming more pronounced insofar as Texas now is saying we're not going to wait for the census. We're going to do it mid-decade. We're going to find out soon whether California follows suit. And I just recently saw an analysis in the New York Times talking about how population shifts, namely California and Texas, are going to also cause an imbalance in terms of the composition of the House. Will you speak to that?
That's right. We used to talk a decade ago about how Republicans had a demographic problem where they were winning primarily among older white voters without college degrees, groups that were shrinking as a share of the electorate. And Trump kind of turned that on its head by winning and breaking through with younger and Latino voters. But now Democrats have a geography problem. And That's that voters are fleeing blue states. According to the latest census projections, California is slated to lose 4 seats and 4 electoral college votes in the 2030 census. Florida and Texas would gain 4. New York would lose 2. Arizona, North Carolina, Idaho, Utah would gain a seat. Oregon would lose a seat. Illinois would lose a seat. So that would be the equivalent of the state of Massachusetts flipping from blue to red. And what that's going to force Democrats to do, they're going to need to expand their coalition geographically in order to win the presidency in the future.
There are roughly 3,000 counties in the United States. I think the number is 3114. I'm sure David Wasserman knows exactly what it is. I'd like to say roughly 3,000. And this I know. If you go back to 1980, which was Reagan v. Carter, Carter the incumbent, 391 of them, only 391 of them, were landslide or blowout counties won by 20 or more percentage points. And now fast forward to the 2024 election, I'm going to put a David Wasserman slide on the screen, which shows that 80.2% of all counties in the United States were won by 20 or more percentage points. And David, that's been a steady progression, right?
It has been a steady progression. And, in the 1990s, Bill Clinton was still winning a broad swath of the Mid-South, and he was winning Tennessee and Arkansas and Louisiana. Democrats have little to no appeal in rural America, and that has concentrated their coalition on the coasts, in college towns, in big cities, to the point that they are winning just a tiny fraction of America's counties, less than 20%. So yes, that's primarily where the people are, but it's an inefficient coalition for purposes of winning the presidency, the Senate, and the House, because the median Senate and House seats are a few points to the right of the nation, because Democrats are so over-concentrated in places where they're winning 80 or 90% of the vote.
Okay, and now the $64,000 question for David Wasserman. We don't change county boundary lines. This has nothing to do with gerrymandering. County boundary lines are fixed. So why in the world has there been this growth from 391 counties being lopsided to 80.2% in 2024? What is it that has caused that change?
I believe it's the educational polarization of the electorate. We are seeing we've seen over the last couple of decades a big sort attributable to where Americans are going to college, and then where they're migrating after they get their degrees. We've seen a clustering of the college-educated professional class in certain urban and suburban settings, and it's not just the suburbs in general. They are clustering in certain types of Whole Foods suburbs, and as a result, it's draining rural and working class America of Democratic votes. Particularly as we've seen Democrats doing better and better with the professional class of voters, and Republicans doing better with the working class. And in 2016, Donald Trump made a tremendous breakthrough with working class white voters. By 2024, he also made substantial breakthroughs with working class non-white voters. And so this educational polarization has reached a fever pitch, and it just so happens that we are more geographically segregated by educational attainment than we used to be.
More to come in just a moment with my special guest, David Wasserman from the Cook Political Report with Amy Walter. This is episode 4 of the Mingle Project. We're talking about self-sorting.
This is Parks.
This is how you roll. This is how it goes. This is how you pop. This is how you rock. Take a chance, do a dance, little romance. This is how you. This is how you excite. This is how you all night. 360 hit me. Now we're going all in. I can feel it calling. The crowd, the light, the night, the sights, the vibe is right. This is how you. This is
Parks, Pennsylvania's #1 casino experience. This is how you win.
Gang, if you've been watching me on YouTube, first, Thank you for that. I hope you're enjoying the daily poll question. I hope you're enjoying the Mingle Project. I hope you're enjoying all the interviews that I do. I don't want you to miss out when I'm next live. It's simple. Click subscribe right below the video and then hit that little bell icon. When you subscribe and turn on notifications, you'll know exactly when to jump in and join the conversation. Go ahead, hit subscribe, click the bell, and I'll see you live right here on YouTube. Thank you. Okay, gang, welcome back to episode 4 of the Mingle Project. This is episode 4, drilling down on self-sorting with the expert, David Wasserman. He's from the Cook Political Report with Amy Walter. To your point, Kamala Harris won 14 of the 15 most college-educated states. Donald Trump won 14 of the 15 least college-educated states in the 2024 election. I either got that from you or I got that from Doug Sosnick, but I've committed it to memory, and I think that speaks to the divide. But now you referenced Whole Foods, and I love this. I always credit David Wasserman whenever I talk about the Cracker Barrel and Whole Foods analysis. I'm going to put the slide on the screen, and you describe what it represents.
In 2011, 2012, I was curious during a slow news week at the Cook Political Report, which two retail chains were the best predictors of where Democrats and Republicans were gaining market share. And what I did was I merged a GIS application that could map out every retail chain with at least 100 locations with a database of county by county election results going back to 1992. And what I found was that the leading indicator for Democrats was Whole Foods Market, and the leading indicator for Republicans was Cracker Barrel Old Country Store. Now, back in 1992, when Bill Clinton first won the White House over George H.W. Bush, he carried 59% of counties that today have a Whole Foods Market and 40% of the counties that today have a Cracker Barrel Old Country Store. That was a 19-point culture gap. That gap went up to 24 points in 1996. It went up to 31 in 2000 when George W. Bush carried 75% of Cracker Barrels and 44% of Whole Foods. It went up to 38 points in 2004. It went up to 43 points in 2008. It went up to 45 points in 2012. And, I didn't think it could get much wider than that. But in 2016, Donald Trump won the White House for the first time, winning 74% of Cracker Barrel counties and 22% of Whole Foods counties, a 52-point gap, nearly triple the gap that we had in 92. Michael, I'll never forget, a couple weeks before the 2016 election, I was going over this data set with a pretty liberal-leaning group of young Capitol Hill staffers in D.C. And there was a young woman in the front row who raised her hand, and she actually asked me, "Excuse me, David, did you mean Crate and Barrel? I've never heard of Cracker Barrel." To me, that foreshadowed the election of Donald Trump. And at the same time, 2024 was very interesting because it was the first year in the history of this data set, really since the establishment of Whole Foods Market, that we saw a slight decline in this gap. It went from 54 from 2020 back down to 52. And I do think there's a case that we may have reached peak polarization. And first of all, I think the racial depolarization that we saw in 2024, Trump made bigger strides in Whole Foods counties than Cracker Barrel counties because he did well. He improved by the most with the types of voters that are more likely to be working at Whole Foods than shopping at Whole Foods. But also, we've seen Democrats kind of hit bottom in rural Cracker Barrel America. They're not losing anymore there.
But they probably can't afford to lose any more there. David, I'm correct that as they continue to build Cracker Barrel and Whole Foods, you go back and you tweak the data that I'm now showing to our viewers, correct?
Yeah, I always use the current locations so that we're doing a time series across the same counties.
I mean, 1992, which is Papa Bush and Clinton, it's 19 points, and it's a steady progression, as you say, except for a blip from 2020 to 2024 in the far right column. The culture gap between the two has just been growing and growing and growing. And again, David, give me the short version of what does that have to do with self-sorting?
Well, of course, no county lines changed during this period. This was Americans choosing to live in places where the vast majority of their neighbors agree with their cultural and political values. And yes, to some extent, it's generational turnover. We've seen the FDR generation of New Deal Democrats in rural America die out. They've been replaced with very like-minded conservative Republicans and voters who are sympathetic to Trump. We've also seen the political migration of the old country club Republican class to not necessarily the Democratic Party, but at least an anti-Trump independent strain of politics. So it's all come together in the trend line we see.
I mean, not everybody has the gift of mobility. Not every red stater can go move and live with blue staters or vice versa. So I don't know that that is a complete explanation, mobility. Maybe there's an osmosis factor. Maybe when you're in a community and it's so dominant a community for one side or the other, you kind of go silent and maybe sit out the process. I mean, I'm kind of struck. I get it in technology. I understand how, you know, you could live in Europe and I could live in the United States and we might enjoy macrame and somehow we connect, you know, some obscure hobby or political perspective. But I'm struggling just understanding how geographically this self-sort is taking place.
Well, the key here, Michael, is American elections are decided by voters who are not that political, who don't mainline cable news or political news at all in their daily lives, but still show up and vote at the end of the day. These voters tend to be less concerned with wedge social issues such as abortion and immigration, and they are more pocketbook voters. These are people who are evaluating, am I better off than I was 4 years ago? Which candidate is going to lower prices and bring about peace and prosperity? And these voters still exist in great numbers, but what's happening is they tend to be persuaded by the information ecosystem where they live in their communities. And it comes down to something as simple as, if you're waiting to get your car serviced and you're in the waiting room, is Fox News on or is CNN on? Or I doubt that MSNBC is on at a lot of auto body repair shops, but you get the point. And who are you friends with on social media? What kinds of posts are the people that you're Facebook friends with parroting on a daily basis? That all feeds into what I've heard referred to as an informational lean, where if you are in a community that's quite lopsided already, you are likely to be ingesting a lot of lopsided information that's going to affect your vote, even if you aren't thinking critically about the issue of the day on even a weekly or monthly basis.
I like that. I'm going to make note of that, informational lean. One thing, if I can tell you, I don't know if you've ever been to the Varsity in Atlanta. It is, to call it a hot dog restaurant is an understatement, like it's a huge establishment. But you just triggered my recollection that they actually, at least the last time I was there 5 years ago, they actually had a room that was the Fox News room. And I guess because CNN has been the hometown, there's a CNN room as well. And the TV in those respective rooms are tuned to those channels. I don't think MSNBC has its own room at the Varsity when you sit and eat a hot dog. Okay, final thought. Wipe the slate clean. What does David Wasserman from the Cook Political Report with Amy Walter most want people to know about the subject of self-sorting?
Well, it comes down to Americans wanting to be comfortable. We want to live in places where we're not going to constantly get in arguments. And now, of course, there are plenty of town contrarians as well, but they're in the minority. I think the myth out there is that gerrymandering has become easier because of advances in technology. In truth, Americans self-sorting, their proclivity to live in lopsided communities, it has enabled gerrymandering. It's made it easier for partisan map makers to parse voters into non-competitive districts that guarantee a certain election outcome. And it has really robbed voters of the choice in a general election between candidates who have reasonable chances of winning. And one of my areas of research is, how do we incentivize competitiveness in how we draw district lines? How do we restore voters' choice in a November election when you have a larger turnout than a primary?
Yeah, and my objective is to get people to mingle, to spend time with those who are dissimilar, and primarily to do so by becoming active in communities and volunteer organizations and doing the sort of things that many of our parents did when the country had this mindset of we're in it together, which I think we've completely lost.
And just one final thought. One reason we might be at peak polarization, why we might see this starting to ebb, is the rising cost of living. And the fact that so many Americans who even have professional degrees, they might be priced out of a hyper blue urban area. And the migration data we're starting to see, there was a great article by Mitch Daniels. It shows that this decade's different from the last decade. We are seeing young college degree holders, young people in general, moving into outer suburban and even rural areas because of remote work possibilities post-COVID, but also because of lower cost of living. And that may have the result of kind of re-engaging and reintroducing people of different points of view into communities that might currently be lacking.
Okay, one can hope. One can hope that we've reached the peak of polarization. David Wasserman, that was excellent. I'm really, really appreciative. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. It's always a privilege.
Thank you. You can catch more of David at the Cook Political Report with Amy Walter. Okay, that was wonderful. What a great drill down on self-sorting. As I said at the outset, it was David in an interview who said to me, you're spending a lot of time talking about gerrymandering and it's all valid, but there's another piece that you need to be focused on. And I started to get into the data, and he really caught my attention with his Cracker Barrel Whole Foods analysis, which I think just makes the point in a way that we can all appreciate and understand. So concludes episode 4 of the Mingle Project. I'm glad you were here. Please continue to watch all the episodes. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and set yourself up for notifications, okay? Episode 5, just around the corner. Thank you so much.